Sure. My name is Mark Sauer. I graduated from Parkway West in 1973. What I do remember well is the connections. Friends, I mean, coming here and seeing some friends that I just ran into in the lobby is great. Teachers, obviously, great impact. People really focused on education. It was a serious business. You knew when you were in school at Parkway that it would lead to something good if you wanted it to, and that is what I remember best about it.
Set a good foundation for you?
Very good. I mean, it was really, that's the best way to put it. I mean, it was a foundation of a lot of education for me. I went from high school to college to med school to fellowship and residency and on and on. So I think if I hadn't had that foundation, it would have been much harder to have succeeded later. Well, right now I'm a professor at Columbia University School of Medicine in New York. I run the Columbia University Test Tube Baby program. I'm also a vice chairman of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. So I actually do research and teach, as well as take care of patients. And it's a busy job. I work and live mostly in Manhattan, so it's a lot different than St. Louis. Well, there were several very important teachers, which I remember very well, actually. That's one thing that strikes me thinking back about high school, is I can remember them first name and last name, not just the person.
Now's your chance.
Roland Klein was a history teacher. Our year in 1973 was a little bit unique because we were the only class, I think, that had 4 years at West, because it was building its junior high school. So our 9th grade class was the freshman class at Parkway West High School, and it was the only time they had a 4-year high school. I remember Mr. Klein because he was one of my teachers as part of the junior high experiment, and then I had him again as a senior in honors AP history. And again, just an outstanding teacher. Dan Deschamps, who I think later became principal at West High School, was my AP English teacher. Again, outstanding, focused, young teacher at the time. And Al Burr, who was my principal, who I know now is quite notorious to this whole region, was a great, leader to have overrunning the school and things. Last but not least, I wouldn't want to forget my cross-country and track coach, Dave Gans, who was quite an instrumental person in the focus and the discipline that we kind of learned there after school, really, because we would run 15, 20 miles a day, and you took it very seriously. So you had school, and then you had practice, and the practices were pretty rough, and they went all year round. But those guys were really, again, instrumental for me in terms of giving me, I think, a focus and a discipline that I carried with me through college and then later on in my studies. I have 4 kids, and they kind of keep me busy, to be honest. I do a little bit of golfing, and I work out a lot at the gym and things like that. But I can't say I have as many hobbies as I would like. When you're a physician, you're supposed to have all these outside interests to keep you healthy and balanced, but it doesn't work that way. You tend to work, and then what little time you have, you tend to spend with your family. I do a lot of traveling in my work, but that's not really a hobby. What I'm known for in our field is kind of innovative research that I got involved with in vitro fertilization and different techniques of assisted reproduction. It started back when I finished my fellowship in the mid-1980s. I was in the group at UCLA that did the first embryo transplants between women. Mostly these were young women that had ovarian failure, and helped allow them to have babies that in the past they would have had to have adopted or not been able to have children. Mm-hmm. I then extended that method to include so-called older women. These are women in their 40s, later in their 50s, and now even as old as 60s and 70s that can have babies using donated eggs, donated embryos to an older uterus to have a biological child of their own. So I got a lot of notoriety from being the first to do that kind of work. More recently, I've been involved both in stem cell research, which is starting to take off now, and with HIV positive men, helping them have families with their HIV negative wives without getting the virus, so that we can do these things in vitro to separate the virus away from the sperm and the eggs and the embryos. So in the HIV Project, essentially, the gist of it is the following. The Centers for Disease Control have stated to physicians they're not supposed to inseminate women with their husband's sperm for fear of them getting infected. Right. Well, these days, because HIV is a very survivable disease, these couples are living a long time, and they expect to have families together. And so it became clear to me in 1997, having been approached by a number of patients that they wanted to have kids, that we needed to have something to offer them that was safe, a safe preventative measure kind of alternative. So there had been a technique coming out of Europe at that time where you can basically separate sperm through density gradient centrifugation steps, where you spin the sperm at 300 Gs and separate it out. And to make a long story short, you can separate the motile fraction of sperm away from elements, mostly T cells, white blood cells that carry virus. And then you can take those purified fraction of motile sperm and inject them into the eggs of the spouse and create embryos, which is what I do every day. It's part of my test tube baby job. So we started making embryos for these particular couples, and we've done about 500 cases now, which is one of the largest world experience with it. And part of my job as a professor, I do a lot of travel, a lot of teaching. I just literally came back from San Francisco to a national conference talking about the HIV program. So it gets me around because it's part of my job is to educate my peers. These are physicians now. I have a great family. My wife's an attorney. We have 4 kids, and 25, 22, 17, and 12.
Uh-huh.
And
I see why you don't have so much time.
so it keeps you busy. My oldest daughter's just graduating from law school. My son's going to med school, and my other 2, my youngest son is going to college next year. He's looking around, and my 12-year-old's in junior high. So. There were so many good times. I mean, I remember, my wife was saying today, we were walking around Washington University where I went to college, and she said, it's interesting when you look back after this many years, it becomes more like a dream when you wake up. You remember it being a good or bad dream, but you don't necessarily remember the details. And I was thinking about that on the way over here, thinking there's a lot of truth to that. I remember Parkway as a very good dream. I don't remember any really bad moments there. It was hard work, but it was a lot of fun. I had great friends, lots of friends, and a lot of good times. And again, I feel very blessed to having had that kind of a experience, because I did have friends that didn't have such a good high school experience, not necessarily because of the school district, just because it's a rough time to survive, with alcohol and car wrecks and other things that happen to people. You lose some people during those years too.
Right.